Hello, everybody, and welcome into Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day, and on this episode, I'm welcoming the owner of ARC Silver, Gold, Osmium, as well as an enthusiast in the precious metals space. We're going to talk about a lot of topics, honing in on silver. We're going to be talking about the BRICS Summit. We're also going to be talking about some fundamental concepts that a lot of people out there have wrong, including inflation. We're going to discuss how the bankers are creating currency and using it to rule the world, and a lot more. It's Ian Everard. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you. It's good to see you again, Jesse.
Yes, good to see you again as well. We have to start the conversation, of course, with silver. Silver breaching $38. It's touched $39 a few times as well. This is a 14-year high. So a lot of people very excited. A lot of people indicating we still have a long ways to go, considering that $38 back in 2011 is around $54 today. And so in real terms, with it, there's still a lot of runway. What are your thoughts on silver's recent price action?
Yeah, I've had a few people ask me, are you excited? And that's not the right word. Full of angst, trepidation of what it will mean as the precious metals keep rising. From the amount of suppression and, from all angles to keep the price of silver down. It's obviously a threat to the power that the banking system has if people decide to exit from it on any meaningful amount. So the consequences of the metals rising, more and more people are actually waking up and exiting the fiat system to one degree or another, some to massive amounts. You probably heard of David Bateman, the Utah billionaire. He put over $1 billion into precious metals about two and a half months ago and was very public about it. And part of that was 12.59 million ounces of physical silver that he took possession of. And I've been saying for 2 to 3 years, when people mention the Hunt brothers and Warren Buffett's silver positions, how is the paper market ever going to end the unlimited amount of shorts, naked shorts, and all the shenanigans they play? You get people taking the long side, tends to be managed money. They always seem to lose, yet they keep playing the game. Obviously, there must be some sort of sweetener in the background for them to keep losing on that bet. But I've been saying for 2 to 3 years, I think there's enough people know what the game is now that we will just keep quietly accumulating silver and the other rare metals until we get fair valuation of the price.
Yeah, very interesting. I've also heard some anecdotal evidence from other people on this show about big money entering the space, much as you talked about that wealthy individual from Utah. Are you seeing more signs potentially that we could see more institutional investment, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, things like that, eventually stepping in to take possession of physical silver? Is this a future that you think is possible?
Yes, I think it's inevitable. A lot of people watching this might have heard of Exeter's pyramid, where when you get financial instability, wealth or perceived wealth tries to seek a more secure footing, so it works its way down through the more ethereal measurements of wealth, which is the bulk of current wealth. So hopefully some advisors will be fiduciary in their responsibilities to their clients and look and understand what is going on. Already gold this century has outperformed all classical other forms of investment. And that's not unnoticed in the media, but has it caused funds to think, do you know what, we might let's have 0.5% of our fund in gold. And I'm trying to think who I read, and they did the calculation that if 0.5% of remaining central bank reserves that are not in gold went into gold, it would push gold to 6,000. So can you imagine if 0.5% of all the other assets under management, pension funds, managed money, hedge funds, if they switched 0.5% of their funds in, I don't think there'd be any metals available at any price.
Yeah, and that was an interesting point you brought up about, the mainstream news is talking about it a little bit, but we're nowhere near that level of a mania in a bull market phase. I think we're in very early stages because most people have no clue about silver or its role as a monetary metal. Even gold. I mean, it has been making headlines because of these nominal all-time highs, but yet at the same time, your average person on the street, at least in the West, would not really be privy to the fact that gold used to be money. So what stage do you think we're in this precious metals bull market? It seems quite early to me. When do you anticipate we'll see that mania phase where, your taxi driver's telling you he just bought, a Philharmonic or something like that?
I mean, it doesn't even have to be a mania stage, as traditionally that's described. All it has to be is people acting sensibly to secure their wealth, very calmly saying, "I'm going to allocate 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%." The market is so tight in supply of retail product, and from what I'm hearing, even tighter for industrial supply. Hence, the rapid run up towards the end of last week, from what I can understand, was the exchange for physical was just blowing out. That there were more demands for physical than physical actually existed for immediate delivery. And hence people were profiteering on that, and the price was rising till it got to the point that people could get paid off with waiting a month for delivery of their metal. So in silver, very, very close. Now gold is a completely different animal. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of physical gold, especially at the current gold-silver ratio. There is no current shortage of gold. Since the 50s, we've doubled the amount of above-ground refined gold in bullion bars, coins, jewelry, etc. Whereas silver, we're depleting. We've depleted the amount of physical available silver. So I think silver is definitely the canary in the coal mine, except this canary is not going to die when it smells the dangerous explosion about to happen. So time-wise, I think you asked how far I think we are on this move. Well, traditionally, people talking about when's a good time to sell, when's trying to judge the peak to move out into the next asset. My gut tells me we may spike, but we're going to reset at a much higher level. And it would be unwise to cash out unless you're buying something that you have to buy, or that is an even better proposition than just holding your wealth and holding it privately. As most people who take physical possession, it's a very private matter. Only their dealer and the owner knows who's got the metal and possibly where it is.
Let's talk about manipulation of the gold and silver markets, because before we hit record today, you said you had evidence with you
I do.
On manipulation of the precious metals markets. Yeah, walk us through that. And do you think that game is starting to come to an end? Some people, including Ed Steer, have been pointing to the fact that, part of the recent price action we're seeing in silver is because these bullion banks who are so short the metal are being forced to cover and go long. What are your thoughts there? And talk to us about this evidence you have of precious metals manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a chart of the short positions and silver action, historically, it's had a pretty substantial effect. When there's a lot of short positions placed, the spot price falls. Well, recently, the spot price has held and even risen. So it does look like the paper manipulation has come to an end. And I think if the governments are in collusion with the banks who don't want silver to run, previously they actually dumped physical metal. I mean, that was part of the London gold pool, that they would try paper shorts, and if that didn't work, they would actually dump so much physical gold on the market they could bring the price down and then buy their gold back cheaper than they sold it for. And that broke down eventually, because eventually people said, "I will take for cheap gold, thank you very much." And I'm certain China is doing that. That they're buying up dips in not just silver and gold, but in a lot of commodities. But the physical evidence I have here of physical dumping is this. I don't know if I can turn that. So that was strategic reserve silver dumped on the market in 1981.
Interesting.
So why was the US government dumping silver onto the market when it had already fallen dramatically? To keep driving it down further. And different, so there were 100-ounce bars, there were 1 ounce rounds, and they even have the nerve to tell you where it was formerly stored at. This one came from San Francisco, the US SA office for. It's like, that's blatant suppression. Why? I mean, it looks as stupid as Gordon Brown selling Britain's gold at what, $270 an ounce, and announcing before he did it, he was going to do it. So he crashed the price before he did it, and then he did it. So this is physical. This doesn't go away. You can't Jeffrey Epstein the data on that. This is here in my hand. That was publicly owned, under the custodian of the US government, dumped on the market when the price had fallen dramatically. So that's enough for me. If they're prepared to do that, there is no other, there's no limits to what else they would do.
And now with the silver price currently around $38, if true price discovery were to be able to happen and the papers market were to collapse, all the manipulation was to end, at what price, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to name a specific number, but how much higher do you think silver could really be valued at? Because like I mentioned at the top of the show, even current levels as a 14-year nominal high should be $54, not $38 if we're adjusting for inflation. If we're going back to the all-time highs, whether that's the Hunt brothers, which some people discount because they said that wasn't a natural market phenomenon, or even 2011 when it got close to $50, we would need to be in triple digit silver right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's easier to think in terms of ratios. 1980, the silver peak, 1,500 ounces of silver bought the average US house. Now, the average US house is a reasonable measure of genuine rise in costs in goods and services because it takes all sorts of inputs from the excavation, concrete, lumber, steel, glass, sheetrock, copper, you name it. There's a whole range of products and services. And although there's been a change in what is the average US house, it's tended to, they've got bigger and bigger and bigger. So, and if you do the rough math, the current average US house is $450,000. 1,500 ounces of silver now would cost you about $60,000. So let's say the average US house, if you have like for like to what the average house was in the 1980s, was 300,000. That would suggest to me that, I know this is getting a bit convoluted, but that would suggest to me that 1,500 ounces should buy $300,000 worth of house if you roughly allow for, like for like in house type and design. So that means 60,000 needs to get to 300,000. So that would suggest to me that silver is undervalued by about a factor of 5. So I will be brave and put a price target on silver, and I'll say $200.
Let's focus in on the gold market for a moment. We've touched on certain aspects of it thus far, but I'm just wondering what the current themes and trends are that you're watching right now when it comes to gold that you think more stackers should be watching.
Oh, could gold be a trap? Directing all the talk is about gold. Look at gold, look at gold, look at gold. Don't look at silver. My personal choice is silver always over gold. Now, I know for some people it's liquidity, the bid ask, the spread is important, and space. And gold is cheaper to store if you're paying someone to store it. So I think gold could hang around in the 3.5s for a fair time from here.
So you see more consolidation sideways, and you think that, this has echoed some sentiments of other people I've spoken to as well, that silver really is one of the most undervalued assets on the planet right now.
Yes.
And platinum being another metal to watch, which has broken out recently and risen considerably as well. So would you be looking to platinum potentially as well?
I'm just going to double back onto the gold, because this thought came to my from what I understand, the output of gold can be increased quite rapidly. So if a mine's all-in sustaining cost is under $1,000, they're going to be cranking up their supply. So I think the supply of gold is going to increase. There'll be a lag, but I think it'll be pretty rapid. That's not the case for silver. It was 75 to 80% being a byproduct. Unless you double the output of your copper or your zinc or your lead, you're not going to get extra silver. So there's a supply constraint on silver that doesn't apply to gold. So again, that for me, that's another positive for silver. Platinum, I don't understand the platinum market. So I'm going to be straight up. It's irrational that for 3, 4, 5 years it was below the cost of production, and suddenly it jumps. The only reason I can think, that the only information I have that could explain that, is that Russia was selling huge amounts of platinum on the black market below their cost of production, just to bring in dollars for their activities in Europe. That would make sense, and maybe they just run out of platinum now. They've sold all their stockpiles. I mean, we know that happened with palladium, when palladium ran up from 400 to 3,600 a troy ounce. Russia dumped they had stockpiles left over from the Soviet era, and they dumped that onto the market. So if that was the effect, platinum could be a very stable speculation going forwards.
Let's talk about the BRICS Summit in Rio, which has wrapped up recently. A lot of interesting conversation, and also 126 joint commitments were adopted by member states. In response to the summit, Trump threatened tariffs on BRICS members who, quote, degenerate the dollar. Your thoughts on the summit, and do you think it will make any meaningful progress in terms of undermining the US dollar and Western hegemony?
The dollar, I think, is bound to degenerate just by the stage in history we're at. Now, if you yes, we got to take into account the effect of the randomness of the tariffs. They're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. 50% on Brazil. I guess we got 2 weeks to find out if they get put into place on the 1st of August. But even if we put that to one side, all of that hostility and the tariff wars, and the dollar is coming to the end of its usefulness as a reserve. It's useful as a reserve for short periods of time. It's useful as a reserve if your currency is even worse. The dollar will lose purchasing power, or appear to gain purchasing power in your country if your currency is really poor and deteriorating. But as we've seen gold for central banks overtake the euro as a reserve, I think gold will overtake the dollar, and we'll have a hybrid system. So to have the full functions of money, and maybe we'll talk about what is money in a minute, you need both. You need the dollar, and you need something that can store value, and you need to adjust and move in and out of both as needed.
I want to get your thoughts on U.S. debt, which continues to be unsustainable. Obviously, we've seen the big, beautiful bill now being passed, estimated to add, I believe, $3 trillion to the U.S.'s debt burden. We have Trump increasing military spending in 2026 by 13% to over $1 trillion. It just keeps piling up here, and yet this administration was supposed to be the one that was going to cut spending. Now we're seeing increased spending. We're seeing more debt burdens. It appears that on both sides of the political aisle, it's like they say, it doesn't matter who you elect. The debt keeps rising and the bombs keep dropping. What's your thought on this untenable debt and deficit situation in the U.S. and this big, beautiful bill being passed?
I still think the debt is tenable and manageable. If we stuck at, and now the debt ceiling's added 5 trillion, so I think we now have a 42 trillion. They're going to reach that. That is actually sustainable for a country as rich as ours in resources, in agriculture, navigable waterways. America has everything going for it on a geological basis and even on demographics. Now, is that going to get messed up if 15 million or 20 million people are deported? That could mess up your labor demographics. And that sort of ties in with how manageable debt is, because you can keep increasing your currency supply as long as you keep increasing your productivity. And to increase your productivity, you do need labor. I mean, even with robotics and, modernization, that's going to eat into the labor demands for sure. But there's basic core functions: agriculture, construction, care, personal care work. I don't think many people are ready for a robot to look after them in a nursing home yet. Maybe that won't be an option. Now, have I deviated from the question? Do you want to pull me back around to the sustainability? So yes, I would say the debt is sustainable if we stopped at 42 trillion. Because we can debase that. Britain did it very well. Britain had a huge debt after the Second World War. And we basically debased the currency, so we paid back pennies on the pound, what we owed. So we could cope with that, but what we can't cope with is the unfunded future liabilities. Some people say 120, 150, $200 trillion. And Alan Greenspan said it very openly. He was asked, can the US government honor its unfunded liabilities? And he said, yes, of course they can. They create the currency, they can send the check out, but they won't be able to guarantee what the check will purchase. So he was saying no. I mean, that was 20 years ago, I think, that interview where he admitted we are stuffed. We cannot cover unfunded liabilities. So that's where it's really, really going to get tricky. More and more people retire and expect their social security payments, expect their medical care that they were told they would get because they've been paying into a system for 30, 40, or some people 50 years. So that's the real issue. And I think that problem is coming fast, and how any government placates a population that are convinced they have a retirement. And then they find out they haven't got a retirement. If these people are fit and able-bodied, are they going to sit passively back and live in a trailer park? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like everything's coming to a head in that sense. The government's just been lying so much. We're seeing it with this Epstein cover-up. I mean, it's been a disaster. I think it's starting to actually potentially be a good thing in that it's lifting the veil off of people's eyes. Even hardcore MAGA supporters are now going, wait a minute. You promised us that the elites would be held to account. And this isn't, I'm not picking on the Trump administration, because I think all sides of the political aisle are just as corrupt. And I think people are starting to wake up to that a little bit. Do you think, because you're mentioning the fact that entitlements is really where the difficulty lies, that they could create chaos, to try to cover this up? And to cover the Epstein thing up as well, whether that is starting a war, getting full on into a war, whether that's some type of false flag at home, just anything they can do to get people's minds and attention off of the fact that they're not going to be able to get paid out their retirements. And that the Epstein list is never going to come out. You're never going to know. Do you think that we could see some sort of events take place to try to distract people from all of that?
I guess it's a system of lack of education, divide and conquer, and you say distraction, but how long can people be distracted? And historically, now, please, nobody quote me, I'm not calling for a revolution in any way whatsoever, but historically it's been the middle classes who have revolted. The people on paycheck to paycheck are just living in such a state of quiet despair. They haven't got any capacity to complain about their situation as long as they eat and have a roof over their head. And the situation of the government not being able to honor its liabilities, it also goes into the private sector. It goes into the banking and the investment world. They have promised the world and they cannot deliver it. I remember when I was 18 years old, I had my former brother-in-law sold me a pension plan, and if I paid in £15 a month, that would give me £15,000 a year retirement when I was 50. And it's like, and I played along, but I knew this just wasn't going to. There is no magic money tree. I mean, for a few of us, I mean, for a few people, yeah, you can get lucky, and there is a magic money tree. And I want to circle back around to the real big picture is, in an inflationary system, there's two ways it ends. And Ludwig von Mises' famous quotation, I'll paraphrase it. It can either end in collapse if we choose to stop inflating. So we say, that's it, no more funny. This is it. We only increase the currency supply with genuine GDP. And then you're going to need some honesty and transparency, because so much of GDP is government expenditure. I mean, the previous so-called all these amazing number of jobs that were created, they were all government jobs. Well, that's phony GDP. And then the other way an expansionary fiat system ends is catastrophic collapse. If you carry on inflating it till it collapses just because it has to collapse. Either one is catastrophic, because if you pick the first one, there's no control measure. Well, what if we'd let it run? How much worse would it have been? It's still devastating. And I've come to the conclusion there is no route for any Western system to get into a sensible place. Maybe Norway. I think maybe Norway have got enough. I mean, even the Saudi wealth fund, they've blown most of their wealth fund. And they were going to build this 178-mile long linear city, and they're only going to build a mile of it. You know, they have no way forward to produce genuine wealth and genuine income as their oil revenues drop. Maybe that's part of what's going on with the anti-photovoltaic, anti-wind. Let's pump more and more oil. Maybe it's a dying legacy there. You know, it still has so much power and influence.
Interesting thoughts. We've been hinting at inflation and talking about it, but before we hit record today, you said that a lot of people have a misconception about the fundamental definition of inflation. So could you walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got Mario Maneko 64 to thank frequently. You know, he would pull out his dad's dictionary, his Merriam-Webster's dictionary from 1971. It would pull up inflation, and it would say the abnormal increase in the money supply. That is inflation. Now, there are other factors, supply shortages, increasing demand, but the bulk of inflation and the core of it is a government and a banking decision to keep creating currency.
And so, as I often explain to people, it's not prices rising; it's the value of the money going down because you have more currency.
It's a bit of both.
Fewer goods. Okay.
Yeah. It's a bit of both. I mean, people say that gold has held its purchasing power throughout history, and it has. But after long periods of suppression, you'll get a rapid accounting, and the precious metals are generally historically given accounting for the currency debasement, as we're finding as the central banks turn to gold. And as individuals turn to gold and silver and other commodities.
Well, talk to us about the banker class that is creating this currency and using it to rule the world. I've spoken to a number of people about this, including G. Edward Griffin, the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island. I had him on the show not too long ago. He was talking about it in connection to wars, how all these wars, the headlines we're seeing, are not necessarily the real reason that they're being waged. A lot of it has to do with the banker class, the military-industrial complex benefiting financially. Talk to us about how our debt-based fiat system allows the banker class to rule the world.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got the actual quotation in front of me, but so Josiah Stamps, British banker, I think from the 1700s, his quote, he said that if you give the banks the ability to create the currency, they will end up owning everything, and you'll become a prisoner, you'll become a serf, and you'll be paying the cost of your imprisonment. And he said this system should end. It's unjust. I think the quotation begins that banking was conceived in sin and born in inequity. And this was a banker saying this is wrong and it should go away and such fortunes as mine should disappear. So that's way back when. And then you have Montague Norman openly boasting about a group of leading financiers forming an imperialism to rule the world. That was in 1924, so 101 years ago. Openly talking about a group of leading financiers. Now, has this gone away? I would say it's just got bigger. It's just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we touched on the over-financialization and how that enables the masking of the true value of goods, services, and commodities to be found. When you can hypothecate and create the illusion of huge depth of liquidity by trading and retrading commodities, the countries that are producing it, the workers that produce those commodities haven't been getting reasonable recompense. Because once a country's mined out, it's gone. And once somebody's worked 40, 50 years, they haven't got another lifetime to work. So the whole banking system is allowing, and is planning to continue the theft of people's very life. To me, it's murder by over a period of 40 years. If you steal somebody's retirement, you've stolen a huge chunk of their adult life.
So who are these people behind the scenes? If you had to, obviously there's some evidence out there, the big families, the Rothschilds, etc. Who else do you think might be involved in this, perhaps based on history or your own hunch? And what is their end goal? Is the end goal simply we just want to take everything we can possibly get our hands on? Are these people megalomaniacs, psychopaths? Are they just purely interested in their own power and enriching themselves even more than they already are with no end in sight? What's going on with this?
Well, the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. Not all evil. Money is not evil, but the love of money is. And so there's no end. So there's never enough. Hence, you get the billionaires now talking about who's going to be the first trillionaire. So I think they lose the ability to think critically. So at some point, it could all collapse in on them. But I think you'd be a brave man or woman to go digging around and find out who they are. If it's probably best not go there. And if you're up against a situation that is, you think your only way forward is to defeat that system, you're going to lose. So the only way is to form your own parallel system, which is if they want to dump US silver on the market cheap, let's buy it. I mean, if they want to sell copper cheap, buy it. If they want to sell rhenium cheap, buy it. And you're forming your own parallel system. Now, unless you're going to be a prepper like, some of the crazies in Idaho that have their fortresses with 100 years of ammo and 1,000 years of toilet paper, that's not for most of us. You've just got to do as to the level you can. And part of that is getting out of the modern mindset of what is in it for me now. Because when you buy this block of silver, what result do you get tomorrow for owning that, or the next day, or the next month? Often you have perceived loss of opportunity. You could have bought Bitcoin at $6,000. So on and on. So people, if you start thinking, well, let's not think about what is in it for me today, tomorrow, next month, next year, but what am I going to need in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What do I want to put aside for that now in a parallel system that can go in or out of the system if it has to, but is private and secure? And I think that's the only way we can individually defeat this group of leading financiers, banking cartel, dynastic families. I mean, they probably go back genetically to ancient Egypt. We're talking millennia, not centuries. You're not going to be able to come at them with pitchforks and overcome them and make everything fair. And sort of circling back around, that's the reason why an inflationary system will collapse, because very few people can exit that system without it collapsing. So it's a self-fulfilling property. And I think sort of circle back around what I said, earlier about people asking me, am I excited about silver getting over $38? No, I'm full of angst and trepidation of what is getting rapidly closer. And that's when friends of mine, family, wake up and they have nothing or very little to spend in the future. And they thought they were secure and comfortable. And so, yeah, I wouldn't, you can understand who your enemy is. Or maybe it's probably better to understand what they are doing that you can do differently to escape from that trap.
I completely agree with that. This has been a fantastic conversation, Ian. Tell us about ARC Silver Gold Osmium. You're a sponsor of this show for quite some time now. People in the industry speak very highly of you, including your competitors. I've spoken to several of them, and to the last, they all have nothing but good things to say about you. So that's a pretty good sign. Talk to us about ARC SGO and how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, sure. The best way is to call me on 307-264-9441. Call or text, and that will get the quickest response. And we really specialize on being nimble and searching the wholesalers to get the best deals. We have a great relationship. They know if they offer us a deal, quite often we'll take half of it or all of it, and they don't even have to publicize it. So it's a dynamic situation in the retail world for precious metals. And that's what we really specialize on, keeping those premiums down continually. We don't rely on charging high premiums so then we can give a special sale. We endeavor always to be the lowest premium in the industry. And if you look at where spot is now on the silver, the premiums as a percentage are possibly the lowest they've been in decades.
Well, I will put a link in the description to your site. I'm going to put your phone number on screen, as well as the email will be in the description below as well, so people can get in touch with you. But like Ian said, the best way is to give him a call on that number that is on screen right now. Make sure to tell him you saw him on the show. Ian, fantastic conversation as always. Looking forward to the next time we can chat.
Thank you, Jesse.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.